We get ready for Thanksgiving, and the Monday before Thanksgiving, always an exciting day, isn't it? Because here we are, we're in the midst of what is going to be, I believe, an exciting hot stove league. We've got fantasy football playoffs about to begin, and so grab a seat, get your fork, get your knife ready. We're going to start chowing down on some fantasy sports. How about it on this Monday morning? Good morning, everybody. This is Arnie, and welcome to Arnie Fantasy World of Sports. Lenny did a great job. Lenny, I'm feeling great this morning. I'm going to be here today, be here tomorrow. Planning to take Thursday off, guys, because I've got a lot of cooking and eating to do on Thursday. I'm sure you understand that. But for the next 2 days, we're going to dig into some football and some baseball. We're going to start with baseball, of course, because that's what it's all about. I saw where George was late for the party. He was shopping for food, and so, George, it sounds like the party will soon be on. When you have an extra seat at the table, just give me a call, okay? I'm into leftovers. I'm into that kind of stuff. But let's give you some fresh stuff this morning. How about that? Looking at what happened over the weekend. Just a few things in baseball. But then we're going to talk about what may happen yet. Matt Duffy cut loose by the Rays over the weekend. And Matt Duffy is, one of those players that he can fill in a lot of positions. Good morning, Kevin Hastings. I understand that we'll talk about Matt Duffy in a moment. I understand Kevin Hastings is following me this morning. And it's good to see you on board in the chat room. So follow up with me. Let's get going here. And what's this about you becoming a hero here of mine, being quoted in magazines for fantasy baseball? I am into that. Congratulations. You're well deserving, and I'm just happy to be associated with Royals 29 Boom. How about that, you guys? So congratulations to Kevin for that. Matt Duffy, though, cut loose by the Rays. Matt Duffy, multiple positional infield, more of a utility guy, but I like him. I like him a lot. And though not the bat of, say, a LeMahieu, I think he's a poor man's LeMahieu. And where does Matt Duffy land now that he's been cut loose by the Rays? Now, the problem he's had the past couple of seasons have been injuries. But when he's on the field, he's a good stick, he's a good glove, he's a good fill-in utility player. He's the kind of guy I could see Boston picking up. I could see Atlanta. Atlanta made a big move this weekend. They're cutting loose of their catcher. They're adding Travis d'Arnaud to a 2-year, $16 million contract. d'Arnaud played really well for Tampa last year. He started the year 2 for 23 for the Mets. The Mets, not much patience with that, cut him loose. He then signs with Tampa, and then the 28-year-old, now 29-year-old, hit 263, 16 homers, 67 RBIs in 92 games with the Rays. Good morning, Lenny. Good morning to the legend. And I hope, Lenny, that I'm back for good. Okay, so we're gonna play that way right now, right? So d'Arnaud's a Brave. I could see Duffy going to a team like Atlanta. I could see Duffy going to a team like the Cubs. We'll talk about them in just a moment as we get to another interesting player I think that could be going to Chicago. But d'Arnaud signs. He will be taking Brian McCann's spot on that roster. Brian McCann not re-signed by the Braves. Jarrell Cotton. Jarrell Cotton came up with the Dodgers. He was a top prospect, traded to Oakland. Arm problems galore. Now he's 28 years old. He's got a high ceiling, low floor because you're not expecting much. 28 years old. He's now signed with the Chicago Cubs. Now the Cubs, they have recently had this, Brian Morrow being one of those. Brandon Morrow, had arm problems, didn't even play last year, but great upside. Now they signed Cotton, great upside, but never really has produced. We'll see what Cotton does. Sure, he'll start the year next year if healthy in the minor league system with Chicago, but it'll be interesting to see because he throws in the upper 90s, and those kind of arms are valued. He's still young by standards, 28. And now Chicago adds another arm to probably what could be in their bullpen, and they desperately need that. Other things that have happened recently, Zach Granite top prospect of the Twins, signs with the Yankees. Just love that name, don't you? Zach Granite. Sounds like some kind of superhero or some cartoon Saturday morning character, right, on the Flintstones. Now introducing for the Yankees their catcher, Zach Granite. Anyway, Jose Abreu re-ups with the White Sox. You know, they signed Yasmani Grandal. Now they have Abreu. Abreu signs for a 3-year deal extension with the White Sox. I'm looking for the White Sox, Lenny, to make a splash going for a starting pitcher. Now, I heard you say about the Dodgers. You talked about the Dodgers and the Yankees, and you talked about Strasburg and Cole. Wouldn't it be just a coup if the White Sox land one of those two guys? And with the pitching they already have, Giolito, Kopech, if you add an ace like a Cole and the bats that the White Sox have coming up, first-year players, minor leaguers coming up, Luis Robert. I mean, this team is only a player or two away from being a contender. Now, I know they're young, but I really like the White Sox in 2020. In fact, I like the White Sox to win that division in 2020. And if they would add an arm like a Garrett Cole, wow, look out. Josh Reddick, shoulder surgery on that left shoulder, his power shoulder, we'd say. Interesting to see how Josh Reddick will come back from what looks like major surgery. Anytime you talk about a shoulder, to me that's major surgery. What does that do to Kyle Tucker and Kyle Tucker's chances playing and starting for the Astros next year? I think Kyle Tucker is going to finally get that opportunity. Now, we saw glimpses of both the good and bad of Tucker. We saw the glimpse of what he can do well, and we saw him in the World Series swinging a ball way over his head, the bad. But if you give the kid the at-bats and you let him sit there, I think you're going to have a good player. I really do. Now, they have the Rookie of the Year coming back. I mean, the Astros are adding pieces as they go so they don't get old all at one time, right? Reddick, obviously not an old player, but the shoulder surgery has got to be of concern. So we'll keep our eye on that one. Reports I've read over the weekend. The Dodgers, you love this, interested in Cole, Strasburg, and Rendon. Now, do you really think they're going to get all three of those guys? No. Who do they go for if they go for any? I think they go for Strasburg or Cole. Not that Rendon's chopped liver, but we see it every year when we get to the playoffs. It's that starting pitching ace that's coveted that not many teams have. Strasburg was that this year. Now, I expect Washington to go after Strasburg. I don't expect Washington to just let him fly away. But the Dodgers are saying they're trying to work up a way to get Cole, Strasburg, and Rendon. Now, just for pretend's sake, what if the Dodgers were able to land all three? OMG. Cole, Strasburg, and Rendon. Are you kidding me? If any team landed all three of those guys, aren't they going to be the World Series hands-down favorite before the season starts? Other news, the Mets. The Mets are interested, reports say, in Starling Marte. Mets center fielders last season hit a paltry .229. Starling Marte, he had his option taken up by Pittsburgh for 2020, $11.5 million. Last year, Marte hit .295. He would be a major upgrade at the position for a lot of teams, but particularly for the Metropolitans. So we'll have to keep our eye on that report. The Mets are interested in Starling Marte. I don't know what kind of package they would send Pittsburgh, but that's one of the trade rumors. We'll keep our eye on that as winter meetings begin after Thanksgiving. Here's another one, and I really like this one. I love this player, 30-year-old Whit Merrifield. He just completed season 1 of an updated 4-year contract under which he is receiving $16.25 million per year on that 4-year extension. The Cubs are interested. The Cubs are wanting to bring Merrifield over to the north side to play for the Little Bears. Look what that would do. You've got Javier Baez entrenched at shortstop. If you brought in Merrifield to play second base, which is his natural position. Now, he can play some outfield. So he's a movable part. But primarily, to be the second baseman, the Cubs have had a revolving door at second base for years. Even the World Series team. Zobrist and whoever else. But now if they could get 30-year-old Whit Merrifield to come in, can you imagine what that would do? That middle infield up the middle for the Cubs, the batting order, all of a sudden Merrifield is a leadoff hitter in that Chicago Cub lineup, able to hit 300, get on base at a great clip. The Cubs offense dramatically improves. You've got stability at second base. George says if he had Lenny's money, DK, I'd burn mine. I tell you what, if I had Lenny's money, DK, I'd take yours and Lenny's. How about that? The Cubs are getting ready to make a move. They got that World Series flavor a few years ago. They haven't been back. They want to get back. Epstein is not going to sit there and just stand pat. Kansas City would probably deal this contract, $16.25 a year for the next 3 years. The Cubs can stand it. It's a marriage made. Let's see what happens. So those are some of the tidbits going on in Major League Baseball. I'm going to keep posting on free agency. I think when we get to the winter meetings, we're going to start to see some moves being made, some trades being made. I look for some trades being made as we get into the hot stove. Now, let's get into some fantasy football. Fantasy football, most leagues or some leagues, next week is the final week of the regular season, week 13. Now let's look at some players from yesterday who seem to be heating up at the right moment. Let's take the quarterback position. And these are some unheralded guys. In fact, these are some guys who weren't probably even in lineups a few weeks ago. Baker Mayfield, yesterday, 24 completions, 327 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, he did throw 2 picks, but it was a good day for Baker Mayfield. Kyle Allen for the Panthers, 23 completions, 256 yards, and 3 touchdown passes. He also rushed for 9 yards yesterday. And tell me anybody out there who drafted Kyle Allen in fantasy football when the season began. I will tell you, no one did. And if you did, you were handcuffing for week 1 with Cam Newton, which, well, doesn't make a lot of sense. Drew Brees yesterday, 30 completions, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns. Drew Brees, well, he's Drew Brees, right? And finally, the fourth quarterback from yesterday who was starring and shining was in the big city, the Big Apple, Darnold. 20 completions, 315 yards against the Raiders, 2 passing touchdowns, and then he rushed 4 times for 16 yards and yet another rushing touchdown. So, 4 quarterbacks yesterday that I really like: Mayfield, Kyle Allen, Drew Brees, and Darnold. Now, how about the wide receiver positions? Check these numbers out. These guys were just stars yesterday. Let's start with the number 1 guy, Chris Godwin for Tampa Bay. He caught 7 balls for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, Tampa is going to throw the ball because they're going to be behind. Not a good football team, but great for fantasy football. Chris Godwin, 7 catches, 184, 2 touchdowns. Another wide receiver from yesterday, A.J. Brown for Tennessee, 4 catches, 135 yards, and a touch. Jarvis Landry, 10 catches, 148 yards, and 2 touches. Now, he teams up with Baker Mayfield, so if you have that combination, way to go, guys. DJ Moore for the Panthers, teamed up with Kyle Allen again, 6 catches, 126 yards, 2 scores, and he rushed once for 8 yards. Allen Robinson for the Bears, 6 catches, 131, and a touch. And here are two receivers on the same team who put up just knockout numbers yesterday. The Texans, Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins. Will Fuller, 7 catches, 140 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, 6 catches, 94 yards, but two touchdowns as the Texans roll. And look at the Texans, they're going to be at the playoffs this year, and I think they're going to be an exciting team. Running back-wise, Jonathan Williams. Who is Jonathan Williams? Indianapolis back. Marlon Mack goes down with a broken hand. Jonathan Williams plays Thursday night. 26 rushes, 104 yards, a touchdown, 3 catches, and 17 yards. Mack's out indefinitely. Williams, he will be the bell cow in Indianapolis. But the bell cow of bell cows has to be Christian McCaffrey. Oh my gosh. 22 rushes for 64 yards and a touchdown. But that's not it. 9 catches, 69 receiving yards, and another touchdown. He gets the silver medal yesterday. The gold goes to Leonard Fournette. Are you ready for Leonard's numbers? 24 rushes, 97 yards rushing, and 2 rushing touchdowns, 9 catches for 62 yards receiving. Leonard Fournette. And the thing with Leonard and the Jags, he's been injured. I had him last year. I traded for Leonard Fournette last year. And after my ending of the season and the fiasco numbers he put up, I thought, never again will I go for Leonard Fournette. Boy, I'd love to have him right now on my fantasy football team. Nick Chubb yesterday, 21 rushes, 106, a touch, 3 catches for 58 yards. It looks like though he may be sharing some time, he's not going to be sharing much time. Nick Chubb is the man in Cleveland and will be the man in Cleveland. And finally, another running back, Henry for Tennessee, 19 rushes, 159 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. He did catch one for 16, but he lost the fumble on the catch. But the rushing yards, 159, and the 2 touchdowns make Henry a bell cow for rushing. So those are 5 running backs who were starring over the weekend for fantasy owners. Jonathan Williams, McCaffrey, Fournette, Chubb, and Henry. Tight end position. Kittle, back off injury for the 49ers. What's going on in San Francisco? I mean, they've lost 1 game all year. They beat Green Bay again yesterday. Kittle, 6 catches, 129 yards, and a touch. Cook for New Orleans. With Drew Brees back in the starting lineup, he's a weapon. 6 catches, 99 yards, and a touch. And Zach Ertz, of course, he's given 12 catches for Philly. Wow, 91 yards and a touchdown. And for those of you who look for defenses, I didn't really see this one coming, but the Jets defense yesterday, if you have them in a fantasy league, they were scoring you some points like crazy yesterday against Oakland. They only allowed 3 points. They had a sack, an interception, a fumble, a pick six. So if you were one of those guys who picked up the Jets defense, way to go. So that's just a look at some of the fantasy football news. Playoffs start soon. How many of you guys are amping up for the fantasy baseball draft? And let's talk about this for a minute. If you're drafting today in fantasy baseball, who's your number 1 pick? Is it still Mike Trout? Is it Bellinger? Is it Yelich? Or is it someone else? So let's look at that. Is it Trout, Bellinger, Yelich, or someone else? Good morning, DK Lush. Let's talk some more fantasy baseball. If we're drafting today, who goes first? I think I got to pick Trout. Now, maybe he's the obvious pick. He's got the same upside year in, year out, whereas a Bellinger or a Yelich could really bust out. Is there a player this year coming up who could have those kind of numbers? Okay, could it be Jordan Alvarez for Houston, who had a crazy, crazy rookie year? Is he primed to continue that? And where does Jordan Alvarez go in drafts? Let's assume Trout, Yelich, Bellinger, not necessarily in that order, are your top 3. Where does Jordan Alvarez go? where does he fall in line with Ronald Acuna Jr.? And Acuna could be one of those top three, correct? I'm just trying to get an idea, chat room. Kevin Hastings says Trout has not been picked number one in any of the 9 NFBC drafts completed so far. Acuna, Yelich, and Cole have been. Now, I'm with Acuna and Yelich. I'm not with Cole. I just cannot pick a pitcher number one overall in a draft. It just goes against every grain in my body, Kevin. But I could see a Yelich or an Acuna. The thing about Trout, he is a constant. He is the home. He is, you can count on him. And I know he gets hurt occasionally, but Acuna and Yelich have this great upside, no doubt. But Trout, the thing I love about Trout, you know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get 40 homers. You know you're going to get a few stolen bases. You know you're going to get over 100 RBIs. You know you're going to get it. You know you're going to get a good batting average. You know that. Now, will the Angels amp up? And this may be the twist here, Kevin. Will the Angels amp up and try to add to this offense? They got a kid, and you know him. I mean, we all know about him in fantasy, Jo Adell, who's going to be starting for Anaheim this coming season. So there's a little more protection for a Mike Trout. Now, I'm not sure where Adell will bat in the order, but from all reports I'm reading, Adell is a 5-tooler, and he's going to be in the Anaheim lineup somewhere around Mike Trout. If he's behind him, does Trout see more pitches to hit? If he's ahead of him, does Trout drive in more runs? So it's a good problem to have, right? Acuna, last year I was reading and all kinds of information that the top 3 players drafted in any draft should be Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, and Ronald Acuna. And I haven't even spoken about Mookie Betts. I'm getting ready to. Mookie Betts reminds me a little bit of the Giants in the early part of the decade. The Giants, 2010, 2012, 2014. So they were kind of an early part of the decade, an even year kind of team. Well, Mookie Betts, look at his numbers in 2016, 2018. Compare those to 2015, 2017, 2019, and you'll see, for what it's worth, Mookie Betts is an even year kind of guy. So, do you think Mookie Betts rebounds to 2018 kind of numbers? Kevin Hastings said, he agrees with me. My goal isn't necessarily to pick the guy with the best chance to finish number one, but the guy I'm certain will finish top 10. And that is Mike Trout. So the way I draft is I try to get that kind of theory in place too. Who is there that I know is going to produce? And my second pick may be the Acuna, if he's still there. Probably won't be. I try to find with my second pick someone who I know will produce but has tremendous upside. Last year in the draft, it was Freddie Freeman for me. And Freddie Freeman set career marks in home runs and RBIs. Now, solid player. You really don't go wrong in your first 2 picks. That's the key. But I just can't pick a pitcher with the first pick. How many of you guys out there pick a pitcher with your first pick? Now, I guess if you're in a 12-team league and you have the 12th pick, you may do that. But I'm talking about if you're a top 5 pick in a draft, are you going to go with a top 5 pick and pick a pitcher? I just can't do it. I can't do it. Not when you've got Trout, Yelich, Acuna, and the list goes on. Jordan Alvarez I take before I take a pitcher, I think. Javi Baez I take before I take a pitcher. A lot. Rendon, Betts. There are Aaron Judge. I'm saying, do you take all of these players before you take a Garrett Cole? I do. Because I got burned one time. It was a few years ago. I drafted Clayton Kershaw with the 7th pick. and I got burned. And my thinking is, I can find a really good pitcher. I can take Jack Flaherty in the 5th round. And could Jack Flaherty have Garrett Cole kind of numbers in 2020? Yes. Once you miss out on the Yelich's and the Trouts and the Acuñas and those top 10 bats, guess what? They're gone. There's a better chance in my mind as I study and prepare for drafts to get a Flaherty or a Berrios or a pitcher of that category who could be in the category with Cole, more so than me taking a hitter of comparable value in that later part of the round. My point being, do you really think Bryce Harper is going to have Christian Yelich numbers? I don't think so. I don't think Bryce Harper is going to have Bellinger numbers, Trout numbers. And I'm not just picking on Bryce Harper. I could name other players who may fit in that same category, but they're just not quite up to, nor will they produce at the Javi Baez level. And so we take those Javi Baez, Bellinger, Trouts, Acuñas, Yelich's, we grab them while they're there. Another good example of a pitcher, last year, how many people drafted Chris Sale early and watched him have the worst year of his career? And it can happen, my thinking is, it happens more often with pitchers. This fall from grace quicker than a hitter does. Sometimes at meteoric rates. We've seen it happen to Kershaw. We saw it happen to Sale. It could happen. It could happen. It could happen. It doesn't happen as often with these bats. My first 3 picks in a draft are typically bats. I'll take a chance with a Buehler late. I'll take a chance with a Flaherty later. Still ace-type material. That's just how I roll. It's great to be with you this morning. Be back again tomorrow. So go do some homework. Get your draft strategies together. Let's talk about it some more tomorrow on Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. Kevin Hastings up next, everybody. So stick around.